And we're live. Welcome back, guys. Appreciate you joining in tonight on this Thursday edition of CABC. And obviously, got my cohort, Mr. Garcia, with me tonight. If you're new to the
What's going
channel,
on?
how you doing, man? You've been look like you have a change of scenery. What you up to?
Yes, in the great warmth of New York.
Yeah,
Yeah, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Just enjoying these couple of days off of work. About to go back to work tomorrow. So,
Good. That's really good.
yep. So tonight we're gonna do some recruiting talk. Got a official visitor this weekend in Tuscaloosa. But before we get into all that, if you're new to the show, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. You'll get we try to put out good content for you guys. Click the notification bell. Get notified every time we post stuff and every time we go live. So,
Yes, sir.
um,
Which is going to be more. It's going
what's
to be
going to be
more.
more? We told y'all we were going to be
Yes,
more. Told y'all we are going
that's
to
the
be better
goal.
at it, and we're working on being better at it. So here we are for the second time in less than 7 days. So getting
Let's
there.
do it.
So
Let's do
yeah,
it.
official visitor weekend. They have an official visitor this weekend. Kind of one of the late risers after early signing day. Ennis Rakestraw, corner from Duncanville. Um, if you could just maybe give a little insight of into Mr. Rakestraw since he is kind of one of the late risers here.
Absolutely. Cornerback out of Texas, as Kevin said, 6 foot, 175 pounds or so. As you see the graphic up there, this is what Ennis tweeted out, I believe, yesterday or today. Basically, he's the headliner. It's all about him this weekend in Tuscaloosa. Another long and lean cornerback prospect. And like Kevin said, a late riser. Really, the last month or so has been sort of where he's been at home in terms of adding offers, setting up visits. And it's pretty much become a blitz of SEC programs mixed in with in-state programs. So Missouri got him on campus last weekend for an official. He enjoyed it. Bama's got this weekend. Texas has the final weekend. So obviously the Longhorns in position to get that final visit to maybe keep Ennis home. But Nick Saban was in Duncanville this week ahead of the official visit, which is always sort of an indicator of confidence to me. I think if Nick goes earlier, he feels a little bit better. The later he goes, he's sort of positioning himself for sort of that, hey, I need to be here to close this thing out. But if Saban goes ahead of time and then you go to Tuscaloosa, typically things are in pretty good shape. And I do think at this point, Alabama is the favorite for Ennis. But again, Texas coming on late. They have a revamped defensive staff. So I'm sure he's eager to meet Chris Ash and those guys just to see what'll be different about playing in Austin compared to what he thought leading up to the new year. But of course, at Alabama, everything's status quo, which is weird to say this time of year. Usually, there's some big turnover and huge coaching movement, and really with Alabama, it's just sort of one position, right? Defensive line. Baker moves off the field. Freddie Roach comes in from Ole Miss, of course, an former Alabama player, a guy who is just beloved in the state of Alabama and really by recruits everywhere. He's one of the sort of unanimous coaches we hear about in terms of positive vibes from kids. And Freddie's won some big recruiting battles in the state of Alabama to get kids to leave the state. So the natural thought is, man, imagine if he's recruiting to keep kids in the state, much like he did. So I do think that's a huge move in the positive direction for Alabama recruiting. But really, that's it in terms of shuffle on the coaching staff. Burton Burns off the field has departed, yes, but everything else is relatively quiet on the coaching front for Alabama, which has enabled the coaches to really evaluate and play aggressively down the stretch. And that's why a kid like Ennis Rakestraw got an offer from Bama before Texas, before a lot of big schools in on his list, even though everybody's sort of late to the party here. He helped him go 15-1 this year. He was the Dallas Morning News Player of the Year. So if you're the best defensive player in Dallas, then that's a pretty good start to any sort of evaluation. But Ennis projects like many of the Alabama corners we're used to evaluating Again, 6 foot, long, lean, great instincts. I think that's sort of his best quality. I don't know if he's elite technically or athletically, but his instincts are there, especially with the ball skills. And really, again, we talk about this more and more as we get deeper into the spread ball era. It's about ball skills and turnovers. So you're almost compensating for a lack of polish with guys who can attack the football. That's what football is about nowadays. I mean, the best defenses in the country are still giving up 30 points, 40 points to LSU, right? So it's about turning the ball over, winning third down, and long defensive backs help get that job done. So easy to see why Ennis is such a late riser, and really one of the priorities Alabama zeroed in on this time of year, and definitely the headliner coming in this weekend. Bama had a huge weekend last weekend with junior days mixed in with official visits. McKinley Jackson was there on an unofficial visit. Of course, he already took his official to Bama in the fall, but it was about getting some other kids on campus as well. But this weekend, more about young guys and Ennis Rakestraw as the headliner in terms of older guys, class of 2020 guys. He's looking at a signing day decision. Again, Alabama, Mizzou, Texas looks like the final 3. I think Alabama is the favorite right now before the visit, which is always an ideal position to be in. So I could see him being one of the last couple of additions to this class of 2020. Again, not many spots left, but we do know defensive back is something that Nick Saban would like to address one more time before February 5th. So if I was still making crystal ball picks, if they let me, I would crystal ball Ennis Rakestraw to Alabama at this point. I would have done it before Saban even visited. He's been really excited about it. He's even shuffled his visits around to accommodate Bama, Texas, sort of as his final grouping. And that's who I expected to come down to, sort of a classic, do I stay home or do I bounce for, a business decision, which has always been a kind phrase to Alabama and Alabama fans. So I do think that's really positive for the Crimson Tide. And again, being the headliner on the visit, I think is smart too. If McKinley Jackson was there, I think some of the defensive staff would default to him. But with Ennis being the guy, I think all hands will be on deck for Ennis Rakestraw from Saban all the way on down, even though the junior day visitor list is getting pretty spicy as well. But for the sake of this pod, we'll focus on the seniors with signing day a mere 13 days away. It feels like yesterday we did a signing day show for the early signing period, but the final one just 13 days away. And at this point, I would expect Ennis to ink crimson instead of burnt orange, or what is the Missouri yellow, Kev? It's like a off yellow.
Yeah.
It's like dark.
I almost said maize, but that's freaking Michigan.
That's Michigan. Yeah.
I don't know. But the guy like you talk about Rakestraw. I mean the junior, the five-star offensive tackle Mims from Georgia. He is
Marius Mims, monster.
Yeah, he'll be there. He's 2021 5-star offensive tackle. With the offensive line group that's so far on the list this year, looking forward to next year, maybe trying to reload that offensive line group.
Yeah, no doubt Bama's going smaller this year. Just 3 guys committed. Maybe Jason Jones thrown in there. They've tried to shoot their shot with a couple guys who are committed elsewhere. Cedric Van Pran, the Georgia commitment, was on campus last weekend. Uncommitted offensive lineman Marcus Henderson may visit. He was at Ole Miss last weekend, and I think that they're in a good position right now. He's a Tennessee kid, so that Ole Miss connection in North Mississippi is right there in terms of location. So I do think that Bama's going to go light no matter what on the offensive line. Even if it adds one more, this is one of the smaller O-line groups we've seen Saban take in, at least from guys who are currently projected to play offensive line.
Currently projected.
Currently projected. Hey, Jason Jones is going to Oregon this weekend, so if that green line is there.
Saw that.
Yeah, that could be a thing.
I mean, I don't know how that – I don't know. Anyway.
Speaking of offensive lineman, real quick, how about Illinois is getting Broderick Jones on campus for an official? Don't know how, don't know why, but that's amazing. Lovie Smith still got some juice, man.
Good for Illinois.
He's still got some juice because that's a war, a literal war. That's like Javian Cohen between Alabama and Auburn. That's a war between Auburn and Georgia for Broderick Jones. At Auburn, he starts day one. At Georgia, he competes day one. But lo and behold, he's headed up to the Midwest today. Kid from the state of Georgia. It's one of the sort of funnier side notes, but hey, you got to start somewhere. If you're Illinois, you got to get them on campus first, and they check that box. So maybe they pull off the shocker of the year. This would be more shocking than George Pickens going to Georgia. This would be one of the bigger shocks and a huge crushing blow to the SEC in terms of Auburn and Georgia. I mean, Auburn, that's the priority just beyond any measure. So if you're rooting against Auburn, which I assume most of our viewers are, you're rooting for Broderick Jones to go to the Big Ten or stick with the Bulldogs. But of course, Bama's going to have to deal with that as well. So, handle that as you may. He was at Arkansas last weekend too. Sam Pittman still a big influencer in his recruitment. So that's a weird one. It's a funky official visit weekend. Some potential flips out there. Florida's got a big official visit weekend. A lot of prospects. They sort of punted on last weekend to push kids towards this weekend. So the SEC will be very interesting. LSU's got big kids coming to town as usual. They actually have a lot of spots left. So the SEC is going to have some twists and turns here late in the game. But in terms of catching Clemson, it's really just Alabama and Georgia. For Bama, I think they'd have to get McKinley Jackson and Rakestraw, maybe one other kid. And in terms of Georgia, they have to basically hold on to Broderick Jones and add a couple of prospects late in the game, maybe an Avante Williams, DB out of Florida, who's high on the Bulldogs right now. So basically, Bama or Georgia have to hit almost perfectly the next 13 days to catch Clemson, who is bringing in their best class ever, which is amazing to think about.
Yeah, that class is pretty scary, but we got some people in the chat. Our longtime listener, Gelato thing, asks how you think Freddie Roach will do, and then obviously it goes from there. And does Roach bring in McKinney Jackson, and kind of how you see that playing out?
Yeah, I mean, people, I guess conventionally, so McKinley Jackson was always thought of as this big name recruit. He rose to the scene as like a freshman, sophomore, as this big kid, and it was always like, man, just wait till he gets some technique and does X, Y, Z, and then sort of like it usually happens, the guys who rose later, who had the later growth spurts, and came onto the scene later, got more coverage, right? The Jalen Carters of the world. Heck, for Bama, Tim Smith, guys like that who in the last 12 months have sort of made their name on the defensive interior, sort of passed McKinley by in terms of buzz. But at that point, Ole Miss was a major, major player for McKinley, and not a lot of people knew about it. Matt Luke, the head coach there, he's a Gulf Coast, Mississippi guy, really tied in with McKinley. That was big. And then Freddie Roach sort of being the secondary for him after Matt Luke was also big for Ole Miss. And there was a sense that if he stayed home, if he stayed in the state, it was absolutely going to be Ole Miss over Mississippi State. Of course, both of those teams have switched coaching staffs and basically don't care about recruiting the state of Mississippi like they once did. So, Lane Kiffin's pulling kids from D.C. and California and Florida. And of course, Mr. Leach is going to be pulling kids from all over, although he did spend this week recruiting the state of Mississippi. So I do think Mississippi State will prioritize it a little bit more. But either way, McKinley Jackson wasn't going there. So Freddie Roach was a big part of that early on. But Bama was always there with Jackson even before Roach came over. As I mentioned, he took the official in September. Bama's been by his school, and Roach is now on this side of the coin. Roach was recruiting in the state this past week already, even though I still don't think he's been officially announced. But again, that's all been confirmed. So I do think Freddie helps in a big way with McKinley. And those who know Freddie, I've spoken to him a few times. He is very believable. And I think in recruiting, it's maybe talked about not enough. There's always, oh, well, he's telling me XYZ about my plan, or he's telling me XYZ about the guys he's developed. But when you talk to Freddie, you're sort of dialed in. Like there doesn't seem to be a lot of fluff in dealing with him. He's old school in that way. He doesn't feel like a used car salesman. He's a younger guy, absolutely relatable. to kids. And then when you look at his resume, he's actually developed his fair amount of NFL guys who were much less talented than the McKinley Jacksons and Tim Smiths of the world that he would theoretically be working with at Alabama. And he's turned some of those 2- and 3-star and JUCO guys into NFL guys. So I do think that his coaching resume is just as good as his recruiting resume, which is what sort of everybody defaults to. But in terms of McKinley Jackson, there is zero doubt that this Freddie Roach hire is huge for that. And if Bama does land him and holds off LSU, which is probably the main competition, Freddie Roach would be a big reason why. Pete Golding, who recruits Mississippi, also a major influencer there. So keeping him in his position, as I said at the top, that lack of turnover at Alabama is a good thing. I think you're going to see a better close because of it. And I think that was important too. And then obviously Nick Saban as sort of the closer there. I think he maybe waits to go say what up to McKinley one more time. But Roach absolutely helps. And again, that one's a toss-up. I think it's Bama, LSU, A&M's in it. Georgia's tried to get in it. Ole Miss and Mississippi State have tried to get back in it. But that one does feel like sort of Bama, LSU at this point. And it's a toss-up. They both need him. They both got a lot of turnover on the D-line. He's seen both plenty on his own dime and officially here soon. So that was a little too close to call for me, but Bama's positioning itself about as well as it could at this stage of the game.
Yeah, I think we'll see what Roach can do down the stretch, and I like the point you brought up, the lack of turnover in the coaching staff this year. Obviously, last year we saw the mass exodus of everybody. I mean, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. I mean, just mass exodus of everybody last year. I think that this year, the lack of coaches leaving and the lack of turnover will really help them down the line.
Think about it. I mean, you were recruited, Kev, right? It's like imagine if your future position coach was going to bolt, 10 days before you signed, or a coordinator.
Yeah, I mean,
And some of these schools, the head coaches are new. I mean, Dave Aranda just had his press conference like 2 days ago at Baylor. I mean, that thing is brand new. So it's kind of wild when you think about it with what Bama has had to deal with pretty much every year under Nick. So this is definitely a different feel. Heck, Bama on the field wasn't as good. So on top of all that, Bama got a head start in this sort of closing period of recruiting. So it enabled them to have a little bit better chance to hold on to guys in the early signing period. Remember, Tim Smith had visited Florida like 7 times, and he's from Florida. That was a major win for Alabama to hold on to him. There were a couple other prospects. Trayshawn Holden was a guy other schools targeted. Bryce Young, there was a little tiny bit of USC buzz there late in the game. So that extra time from losing the Iron Bowl and not getting to Atlanta, as much as it may hurt some of our listeners, that helped in recruiting in terms of timing to relay those messages early on. Hey, we do have our staff in place. And remember, there was some Sarkeesian Mississippi State buzz for a while there. So all of those sort of boxes being checked really helped Alabama. Really the only turnover again on the defensive line. And that's something that was obviously, that was Saban initiated. It wasn't poaching, so even if they had a great relationship with that position coach, he's still there. He's just not in the same role. So I think that's where Burton Burns helped a lot over the years as sort of an off-field guy. So we'll see if that's the case on this side of the coin. But there's no doubt that Freddie Roach is an enhancement of that. So if that's your only turnover, it's got to be a good sign for your closing. And that's why Alabama's number 2 in the rankings and really is one of 2 teams with a chance at number 1. And right now, if you had to bet on Rakestraw and Jackson jumping in, I think that's a solid bet at this point. You're still shooting your shot with some other guys as well. Alfred Collins. There's another D lineman in Texas whose name escapes me. Bama's trying to address D line as much as they can here down the stretch. So if you can add 1 or 2 of those guys, I think you got a decent chance, especially because we know Clemson is done. We know Clemson is at 23 commitments. They're good to go. They're working on 2021. They're going to get a premier pass rusher on Saturday in 2021. They got a huge junior day Saturday. They've completely moved on. So you can only close that gap and eventually threaten to overtake Clemson at this point. So really, it depends on that and how well Georgia does. If Georgia goes perfect down the stretch, and heck, they're even talking about being back in it with Zach Evans, which is insane to me. But that's recruiting, right? Zach Evans is like, I signed with Georgia, and then he said all week at Under Armour he signed Georgia, and then after the game during the game he apologizes with Dion in a very awkward moment. After the game, he's like, I can't really talk about it, and then it's pretty much assumed that he signed with Georgia for whatever reason publicly. Georgia didn't send in the LOI, so then every school comes up: Ohio State, Florida. LSU, A&M, Tennessee, and now it might cycle all the way back to Georgia, which is I don't even know how to think about that. But that's the Zach Evans recruitment. But in terms of the rankings, if they had a 5-star running back, they hold off on the flip attempt of Broderick Jones and Cedric Van Pran. They get a guy like Avonte Williams. They already got the premier quarterback in the transfer portal in Jamie Newman. So they're going to have a shot because now transfers are going to factor into those rankings. At least they do for me at SI All-American. Now, all of a sudden, Georgia's got a legitimate shot. But that's a lot of dominoes that have to fall Georgia's way, including the biggest question mark in the class in terms of recruiting with Zach Evans.
Yeah, let's not just speed past that transfer portal news like nothing's happened here in the last couple of days with the transfer portal because
Portal's heating up, man. And Jared Williams is back in that thing.
Yeah, I mean, well, me and you talking about LSU needs a guy out of the portal, and we're like, gotta be D'Eriq King. It's gotta be D'Eriq King, and then
man, that was huge.
Visits Miami once. I don't even think he takes his trip to Maryland that he had scheduled, and now Jaron Williams is in the transfer portal. I'm sure Tate Martell will be in the transfer portal in not too long. I mean, good God.
I mean, well, now he's got a chance to be the backup, though. So why would he bolt?
Why would you want? Tate Martell's not a back.
Tate Martell doesn't think he's going to start, does he?
No,
he's going to start at Miami with King.
No, but Tate Martell's also not a backup ego either. Like he's not the kid.
That's a different thing.
He's not the kid that's going to be like, "Oh, I'm okay with being the backup." Like, no.
Yeah,
we've seen
different
QB. If you haven't seen QB1, the documentary, go watch it. You can obviously tell he's not a backup ego type kid. But you know, I just when you said transfer portal, I mean that's the latest here in the transfer portal is Jaron Williams in, D'Eriq King out. Now at Miami, Lord have mercy.
Right, and there's still some good quarterbacks in there, right? Chase Bryce is in there. Justin Rogers is in there. KJ Costello's in there. Although there's some buzz with Mississippi State there. We knew Leach was going to have to hit the portal. Maybe it's Costello. I actually think there's a couple better fits out there. Personally, I think Bryce would be the guy for me if it wasn't Newman. Who was the other one?
Malik Henry's in the transfer portal again.
It's just like at some point.
Like I don't know how he still has.
How many colleges is this?
I don't know. Well, I mean, he goes to Florida State. He goes to Independence. Obviously, we've all seen him on Last Chance U. Then he goes to. He sits out, comes back randomly to Independence in the middle of the year, and then
the next year.
Yeah, the next year comes back and then ends up at Nevada.
Started a couple games.
Yeah, ends up losing the Nevada job, I believe, and now he's back in the transfer portal. So, good luck, kid.
The kid had a hell of an arm, man. But obviously, you need a little more than that. Yeah. Now Jaron Williams is in the portal. Maybe wouldn't it be funny if LSU got Jaron Williams out of all this?
Yeah.
Because
then it's crazy.
That'd be a battle. Jaron Williams and Miles Brennan.
This day and age of college football and this transfer portal is getting crazy. But Gelato asked do we think that Pete Golding is an elite recruiter? Kind of tying back into the Bama, like at the Rakestraw coming, do we think Pete Golding's an elite recruiter? Because we all know, the defensive coordinator at Alabama has typically been an elite recruiter.
Yeah, is he on the level of those guys? You're talking Pruitt, Lupoy,
Yeah, I mean,
Kirby. I mean, no, come on.
like Lupoy was on a different level than most people. I mean, but I mean,
Right.
do you think Golding is elite, or I mean, is he
I mean,
just?
define elite. Are we talking top 10 in America among defense coordinators? I would say no. I would say
Okay.
no. Um, but elite is thrown around a ton.
Yeah,
Um, how many elite recruiters are on Alabama staff for real? We know one at the top. Once you get down after that, I think Sarkisian's an elite quarterback recruiter, but that's very narrowed. Um, just define elite. I think if you're talking the true meaning of elite, no, he's not.
yeah,
But can he succeed at Alabama with the script A on his chest under Saban with that defense in place? It's going to have another group of early round draft picks this year and probably the first safety off the board is Xavier McKinney. All those things are still in place. So there's no reason for him not to get elite prospects. And Bama has recruited elite prospects year in, year out. And he's been a big part of that of late. And if you get McKinley Jackson, who is the top target for Alabama and LSU post early signing period, then Pete Golding's a big reason why. So is he elite? No. Can he get elite recruits? Yes. Because I think McKinley Jackson's a top 10 defensive tackle, so he would be an elite recruit.
yeah.
Rakestraw on campus is going to spend time with him, of course. Golding's recruiting territory sort of starts in Mississippi and goes west. So there is a little bit of Louisiana, Texas in there. So yeah, I would consider him with the ability to get elite recruits. Yes, but is he? I mean, think of those names that we said, right? I mean, Lupoy's in the NFL, Kirby's a head coach, Pruitt's a head coach. Um, you know, can he get on those guys' level? Probably not. I don't think he was interviewing for head coaching jobs this offseason. Can he get there? Yeah. At Bama, it takes one good year. And I don't think Pete Golding's at fault for what this defense looked like in 2019. The linebackers were half our age, Kev. Like it's crazy. It's crazy to think about the losses that they dealt with. Not to mention Terrell Lewis, LeBron Ray. The secondary was banged up at points. And look, Bama has depth, but against some of these buzzsaw teams, especially LSU, it wasn't going to matter. It just
No.
wasn't going to matter this year. And the two games you lost were wild and weird and crazy shootouts with LSU and Auburn. Um, with Kirby Smart calling that defense, do you lose those two games? I don't know. You lose LSU either way, in my opinion, because Kirby got beat down by LSU with a better defense this year, right? So I don't know how much. I don't know if Golding is not the best coach on staff, but I don't know if the blame he's received is quite warranted. Again, my big thing with coaches is who are you going to go get? You
Yeah,
know, these Auburn fans who are talking about firing Gus, who were you gonna go get
yeah, that's what. Yeah, like
with that personnel? Were you gonna go get Lane Kiffin at Auburn? Probably not. It would
no,
have been hilarious,
that would have been amazing.
but you probably wouldn't. Mike Leach wouldn't have fit at Auburn. I'm trying to think of guys who took these new jobs
Dave
this
Aranda,
year. Aranda definitely wouldn't have got the call. Auburn's not going to have a defensive head coach like
Matt
that.
Rule.
Rule wouldn't have even interviewed. It's just who would you have gotten at Auburn? Again, it's great to fire the guy as a fan, but you got to think of the next step. Who in the world is going to replace that guy? So I hesitate with that a little bit, especially with Nick Saban still there, still sharp, still fully engaged. I hesitate with those things to some degree. I don't think it was. I just think Bama had a problem rushing the passer with four guys this year. They had to bring pressure. And those linebackers who were used for that weren't as interchangeable as they used to be. Rashawn Evans is not there. Dylan Moses was not there.
Yeah.
So it was just even Mac Wilson, who was a good blitzer. I mean, these guys were not there. I don't just saying. I'm just saying.
We're just giving
You
Mac
know, so
being good at something.
hey, NFL linebacker, right?
True story.
So
Cleveland.
I think the injuries and the circumstances made it pretty hard on Golding. There was a ton of youth in that front seven. And injuries. DJ Dale getting hurt was a big deal that people don't talk about a lot. Anthony Jennings is hurt every game, it feels like. He stays in, but he's banged up. So I do think that Golding was graded a little harshly by Bama fans, but that's what makes Bama fans great, right? It's a spoiled group who expects elite guys at every position. Our DB coaches be elite, linebackers coach, running backs coach, everybody has to be elite. That's why it's Bama. That's why it's been, the greatest 10-year run I've ever seen from a college program. So we'll see if they can keep it moving. I think this recruiting class will help pretty much no matter what. And yes, Pete Golding is a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's he definitely doesn't deserve the hate that he gets. I think he's a pretty good. He did well with what he was given last year, and like you said, the injuries that occurred, and obviously you lose your signal caller. I mean,
We said it.
Your defense is gonna struggle. You lose your signal caller, your defense will struggle. And I thought they played well for what they were given, and the young guys stepped up and played well. The freshmen they had stepped up, played well. We saw a lot of Shane Lee and Christian Harris. They played, Shane Lee was a lot more. He was better in coverage than I thought he was going to be. But he's not Dylan Moses, and that is what it is. So
yeah.
So we got some more stuff in the chat talking about. Do you think Damian George is holding off to see what Zach Evans' actions are? They seem to say the guys are a package deal like Sanders and Neal last recruiting class.
Sanders and Neal package deal. I never heard that. And I talked to those guys for 3 years. I think the package deal was supposed to be Umstead Sanders and Trey Sanders, and Umstead was at Florida. He has since hit the portal, by the way, with Trey going to Bama. Package deals never work. Also, right? What was it? Marlon Davidson and Mac Wilson were a package deal as high school teammates, and one went to Bama, one went to Auburn. Package deals rarely work. Damian George, Zach Evans package deal was there early. It was talked about. But once George popped to Bama, that sort of quelled down. Bama signed 3 running backs. Ain't no way they're going after Zach Evans. First of all, on the field, they have too many running backs, especially with Najee coming back. And off the field, ... I don't. They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. I think Damian George held off because he has academic question marks. He does have other schools interested. And he is a big old, he's bigger than Jason Jones. Like, he is a massive, massive human being. And I think that limits him athletically. So I do think that's part of the reason Alabama's been recruiting offensive linemen. If they can over-recruit Damian George, I think they would. Again, the pool of available linemen right now, not great. It's Henderson. It's Broderick Jones, who's not really considering Alabama. It's Van Pran, who visited but is pretty darn solid to Georgia. Jason Jones, Damian George. That's kind of it in terms of Alabama's perspective at this point. I do think that George signs with the Crimson Tide. But again, he's got some things he's got to finish up on his own academically, him and Javon Baker. So the odds of both of those guys getting into the class when it all wraps up, I do think are fairly low, which is why Bama has, 27 verbal commitments. But they're not going to sign, and they're still obviously recruiting more guys. So they're not going to sign 30-something guys. It's obviously going to be 25, 26, 27, which means there's got to be guys who are committed now who don't sign. And Baker, Jones, George, those guys are still sort of on the bubble, in my opinion.
Yeah. Do you think, another one from the chat, do you think that Bama keeps the 2021 quarterback Drake May?
Drake May, he dropped like 35 points in hoops last night. So he's stunting like his big bro, Luke May. I don't see any reason for Drake May to end up elsewhere. Now, if Bryce Young comes in and he's the guy from day one and it's like all hail Bryce Young by October, could he get cold feet then? Maybe, because his path to playing is now 2 years delayed, no matter what, right? If Bryce Young is the guy from the jump. But if Mac Jones wins the job, now all of a sudden it's theoretically an open battle the day Jones is done after this year. And Drake May is coming in able to battle Bryce Young immediately. So I do think that battle is going to be important to Drake May if he's looking at depth charts and things like that. But Kev, you're in Carolina. Luke May at UNC, wasn't he sort of a reserve guy for a couple years before he really became the guy at Carolina? So I think their family is not diva-ish and like, hey, I need to play now. There's no Blake Barnett in him, I don't think.
No, I mean, yeah, Luke May at Carolina was a reserve. He had a big game in the tournament the one year, and then, the next year kind of blows up. So, yeah, I mean, I guess if you're going off of family history, I mean, he sat in this age of one-and-done college basketball, Luke May played 4 years at Carolina and waited his turn to become the guy. So, I mean –
oh, that's right. He hit the game winner, right?
Yeah,
tournament?
Yeah. The game winner in the tournament. And so, I mean, Drake May, the quarterback, he's Myers Park, I think.
Yeah, he's a beast, man. I've seen him throw in person up in Charlotte with you last year, Kev. That was a heck of a camp. Brock Vandegrift was there, recent Georgia commitment. Dudes are slinging it, and Drake May is physically sort of strikes you when you see him. He's a legit, 6'4", 6'5", maybe, and athletic. His release is a little long. He's got to fine-tune some things, but the athleticism and physical prowess is already there. This was obviously – last spring. So this was before he was, even a junior in high school. So I think Drake's got a lot of potential. He put up crazy numbers in 2019, and he's obviously never really focused just on football. He's a great basketball player, as you would expect, given who his big brother is. So that's intriguing, right? What is he going to be like when he does focus on football all in? So he's sort of the opposite of Bryce Young in terms of how he got here, right? He's more like DJ Uiagalelei. Multiple sports, not the quarterback trained from birth kind of kid, but big, strong, athletic, and kind of like wows you a little bit in person. So I do think when Drake gets to Bama, if he sticks, I do think that he instantly becomes the second most talented quarterback on the roster behind Bryce Young, who's generational for me. So I think that'll be interesting. But again, unless Bryce is the man and has this year where it's like, man, this is, Bama's in the playoff kind of thing, then I think, he probably sticks with Alabama. But if he starts and has a Bo Nix kind of year, which is good, but not, earth shattering, I think he takes his chances and bets on himself and still ends up at Alabama. But I'm sure Mac Brown and North Carolina are sitting there like, hey, buddy, Luke had a pretty good run here at Carolina. Sam Howell is entering year 2, so he'll basically be right in that, to use the same kid, he'll be right in that DJ Uiagalelei territory where by the time he gets there, that top quarterback is in year 3, just like Trevor Lawrence is going into year 3 with DJ getting there now. So he'd basically learn for a year, and then he'd be expected to be the guy at Carolina. So I could see that becoming a thing, but again, talking to the kid a couple times and the family history and the unknown with Alabama at quarterback on the field next fall or this fall, I guess we're in 2020 now, I think is a lot. There's a stretch to worry about him at this point, at least.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Mac Brown's shown he can come in last minute and steal a quarterback, so you never know.
Ask Willie Taggart how good he is at that.
Ask FAU's new head coach, Willie Taggart.
Man. Whew. That's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Is he the second best quarterback in the ACC already?
Yeah.
Newman left, so
Newman left. So I mean,
Newman left. Perkins graduated.
I can't even tell you. I probably can't even name 3 other quarterbacks in the. I don't know who Georgia Tech's quarterback is. I don't know who Syracuse's quarterback is. I mean,
those 2 schools don't know yet either.
Yeah, probably not. So I mean, Sam Howell is definitely the second best quarterback in the conference.
I guess Derek King. Yeah.
Sam Howell's still the second best quarterback in the conference, even with
you might be right. You might be
I
right.
mean, he had like he threw for like 35 and 7 his freshman year. So I mean,
Yeah, you're right.
maybe could
It
have.
should have, and really, it was besides.
Job if he would have, if he
Yeah,
would have
and
gone to
besides
Florida
LSU,
State,
he was the quarterback with the best chance to beat Clemson this year.
Yeah, I mean, God, should have beat Clemson, but
I love that they went for 2.
That's
how
man,
you do it.
right out, son.
Like, because you ain't gonna win that overtime. You're not
Return
gonna
of the
win
Mac.
it.
No, you're not. No, you don't even give it the chance. If you're Carolina in that chance, you don't even give it the chance. No.
Go for 2 every time. You have nothing to lose. You already took number 1 to the wire, or whatever they were ranked at that point.
Yeah.
You already took them to the brink. So you let it fall.
You're not gonna get a better chance. Go ahead and go for it.
Yeah, they got a chance to really be an ascending team, I think, because the state of North Carolina right now is awful in football.
The only thing they got to
NC State's down, Wake's down, Duke's been down. It's pretty much them and Appalachian State, right? Like you said. So
Appalachian State beat Carolina last year, so.
But it's cyclical there. So whoever's on top at that time can go on a nice little run, and I think the team with the most upside in going on a run like that is Carolina because of the tradition, because of right now the coach.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think it could be sustained a little bit longer. So ACC a little more interesting than we thought. How about that?
We'll see how that goes. I mean, it's still that Clemson releases a 2020 schedule, and God, I mean. Can we just laugh at that can we just laugh at that schedule for a minute? Because all of Twitter
is pissed off Clemson now too, right?
Yeah, I mean, all of Twitter's laughed at that schedule. I mean, people give Bama the hard time about their schedule. I mean, their schedule 2020 looks way better than Clemson's schedule 2020.
Hey, Bama SC game 1, man. I don't know. That could be USC's offense can do some things. Didn't go pro.
I feel like USC's never going to be successful unless they get rid of Clay Helton. I don't know.
Yeah, no, look, defensively they're going to give up points to Alabama, but
this is the Pac-12. They don't know how to play defense.
Can they get into the 30s? Probably not, but I think they got some talent, man. They got NFL guys on that offense, but they did lose their best O-lineman and receivers. So
they'll need to grab a couple stops, which, I mean, probably not going to happen. Just saying. So,
but I think that game, but this game 1, if you're Nick Saban, first of all, congratulations on being Nick Saban. Let me ride a jet ski. Yeah. If you're Nick Saban, does the opponent game 1, if you're playing Charleston Southern, would you be that much more likely to play Bryce? If everything's even with Mac, right? Yes. Everything's even with Mac, like Charleston Southern, okay, let's play Bryce, right? But against USC, wouldn't you be that much more likely to play Mac?
Yes.
If it's even.
Yes. Oh, but for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting.
You want a lot. You give him the opportunity to go out there, and you give him that, maybe first 1-2 series of the game, see how he looks, and then if he can't do it, then at that point you look at turning it over. Yeah, so if it week 1 they play USC, week 2 they play Georgia State. If they're playing Georgia State first week, maybe they play Bryce. But
that's interesting.
Playing USC in Arlington, neutral location. I feel like you got to give the start to the. Even if you have every intention on replacing him series 3, you still give the. I feel like you still give the experienced guy the nod.
Remember that was the game where Blake Barnett started, but Jalen Hurts came in series 3, I think.
And I mean that's usually your
a wrap.
Yeah, you usually give the guy 1-2 series to get it in, see if he can get it in. If he can't get it in, series 3 is always all right. Well, let's see what you can do.
Didn't Barnett fumble on the first series or something?
Yeah, it was something like that.
It wasn't good, whatever it was.
It went from this highly touted 5-star to
who the hell is Jalen Hurts?
Who's this kid? Who's this black kid with dreads from Texas?
Yeah,
who's Jalen Hurts?
Did you see the video? I don't know if you saw it today. He was at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
And like 50 kids ran up to the gates because he was walking by. Jalen Hurts.
I'm sure he signed every piece of everything.
He was like walking on the fence. I don't know if he was going to practice or watch film. I don't know where he was going. But actually just popped up on my timeline again. I'm going to watch it on silent so I can give you the play-by-play. I mean, every single kid is like screaming. This is in Mobile, right? These kids are screaming for him. It looks like it's a private school. I don't know. And one kid is bawling, crying. It's a boy. I mean, he's just bawling. He's like, this is my dream. Like, Jalen Hurts, ladies and gentlemen. Incredible. So, yeah, he's been quite the story in Mobile. One of the bigger stories in the Senior Bowl that I've really ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, cool thing Senior Bowl does for him. They give him the half Alabama, half Oklahoma helmet. Thought that was pretty cool. And
really convenient too that the colors are almost the same.
Yeah, and then they talk to all the Alabama guys, and they all have the utmost respect for the guy. They all say, "Oh yeah, we still consider him a Bama guy." Like, that's one of those things where most of these guys that transfer out, people are like, good riddance, good, like go fly a kite. But they still have
like what Jared Williams is getting right now from
Miami. What Jared Williams is getting in Miami, like, go fly a kite. Like,
the gifts are pretty great.
But it just speaks volumes to him as a person and him as a man. What he went through. Coming in, winning the SEC championship game. Just big moments for him. And when asked if he was going to switch positions, like they ask everybody. Let's get real, guys. But he said, "I'm a team player, but I'm a quarterback." So,
yeah, no crap. Under 6.5 years between now and ESPN debuting that Jalen Hurts 30 for 30. 6.5 years. So July 2026. Over under. That's the debut premiere of Jalen Hurts 30 for 30 from Texas to I don't know what they're gonna call it.
To Carolina. No, I mean,
I'm sure Matt Rule would be good with that.
Yeah, I still want a 30 for 30 on the 2009 Gators.
2008,
2008 Gators, whatever. But that still hasn't happened, and we're 12 years later. But no, I mean, yeah,
that one's a little harder to put together than the Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, one of them
little harder to produce, I think.
One of them a preacher, one of them's now dead.
But everything in between.
Yeah. So, we'll go. I'll go over 6.5 years.
Yeah.
Depends on what comes about in the.
What if he's the rookie of the year next year?
Oh, I'll write it down today, January 23rd at 9:01. That if Jalen Hurts wins NFL Rookie of the Year, we're having a full pod with Dave.
Where is Dave at? Where is Dave?
But we'll definitely have to get that going if he wins the Rookie of the Year. I'll need a Dave segment on a pod. So
I think he would actually eat his crow. I think he would kind of bow out and say, "You know what? You're right.
Yeah,
he's the man."
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
What else we got in the chat?
How good is Jace McKellen? Could he be in the running back rotation with Roydell?
I like him better.
I like McKellen better than Williams.
Yeah, I think Roydell's classic. I think Roydell is maybe Brian Robinson with a little more juice.
Yep.
But I think Jace McClellan his ceiling could be anywhere from Josh Jacobs to DeAndre Swift. I mean, he's dynamic in space, very comfortable on third down as a pass catcher, extremely quick, got the long speed to go along with it. I really think that talent-wise, he's probably the third most talented back on the roster behind Najee and Trey Sanders. I think they got a couple of space backs to work with. So I think it's going to be hard for any of these freshmen to crack the rotation. Let's be honest. I mean, Najee's going to get the lion's share, especially if Bryce Young is your quarterback. You got to lean on Najee a little bit. Brian Robinson will be a senior, right? So Robinson's going to he's trusted, right? He's gotten carries for 3 years. He's big, strong, physical, doesn't fumble. He's a trusted back in this system. Local kid from Tuscaloosa, Nick loves him, rewarded him, with the number 2 duties this year. So I think he tries to maintain that. And then Trey Sanders got to get the ball. So I think for any of these freshmen to touch the field significantly, it's going to take an injury at this point. I don't think either of the three is otherworldly talented to where you got to get him in. If Trey Sanders was healthy last year, I think he would have gotten some touches, but he wasn't. So it was pretty much all Najee, a little bit of Brian. I do think this year you'll get both of those guys back, big, strong guys. And then Sanders is not a small guy either. So I think the Bama rushing attack this year is going to feel a little old school. I think Bama fans will enjoy it. It's going to feel a little bit like, what was it? Richardson, Ingram, Lacey, that group. It'll feel a little bit like that, just in terms of size, power, and confidence when it's 3rd and 1. Any of those three guys can lower his pad and get you that yard. So I think any of these freshmen are going to be hard pressed to see the field. And I think Alabama recruited thinking that Najee was going to leave and that Robinson was always sort of a number 2. And then there's a question mark with Trey Sanders with his health. So I think Bama recruited aggressively at that position because of those factors. Sorry if you could hear the sirens, but y'all know where I'm at. So I think that's why they were so aggressive, but everything kind of lined up. I mean, it's not hard to imagine a scenario where Najee goes pro, Brian hits the portal, and Trey Sanders takes a minute to get back. We already saw Jerome Ford hit the portal, right? So it's not a lot of imagination to get there. So I think that's part of the reason why Alabama was very aggressive in its running back recruiting. And Charles Huff is a pretty damn good recruiter if you haven't figured that one out yet. Not a lot of people are worried about Burton Burns stepping away because of how good Huff has been. The top running backs are still coming to Alabama, whether it's Najee, whether it's Brian, Trey, the 3 this year. Keelan Robinson from last year's class, I still like a lot. So I think he's a year into the system and ahead of these 3 as well. So I'd pump the brakes on any of these guys getting playing time. But if it did come to that, I'd actually go McClellan over Roydell in 2020 because of what we're doing in college football right now, the offense under Sark. 10 years ago, I'd go Roydell, but in 2020, I'll go Jace. He's that good, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like him.
There's a reason Bama pushed for him and not Zach Evans at the end.
Yeah,
just think about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that kind of wraps up what we got in the chat tonight. I'll let you get on to your engagements that you got going on. And
unfortunately,
yeah. So
I got to go on a show where they're going to ask me about Zach Evans. So
nice.
Got any advice for me?
Well, I mean, just just pull your. I like the whole. It might come back to Georgia again. So just tell them.
Man, could you? I was thinking real quick before I go. Have we seen that?
Well, like
get out of a letter of intent.
No, I don't think so.
Take other visits and drama and blah blah blah, and then try to sign with that school again. And the kid's not in school right now. He graduated, so it's amazing. Yeah, he can take a visit right now if he wants to. I mean, it's amazing. It's just amazing to think about. Kicked out of a state championship game because he didn't want to adhere to the phone rules of his coach.
Oh my God.
Dealt with injury. I mean, this kid is so talented. I mean, he's like Melvin Gordon. I mean, he kind of looks like him too. MVP of the Under Armour game. I mean, this kid has juice, but there's so many good running backs this year. But yeah, could you imagine if he ends up back at Georgia? I don't think I've seen that. I haven't researched it, but I don't think I've seen that scenario or anything close to it play out. So he's absolutely the bizarre case of the 2020 cycle, but he's so talented that people are making exceptions for him. So whether it's A&M, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, somebody's going to end up. All we know is that 3 teams have bowed out: Alabama, Ohio State, and LSU. They're out. So there's some other talented backs out there. Jahmyr Gibbs is at Florida this weekend. He's my favorite back in the class. He's still out there. I think people are going to fight for him. But after that, Zach Evans is really the prize. So I wonder how that's going to shake out. So I'll leave you with that. Enjoy.
Yep. So, guys, as always, we appreciate you coming in, hanging out with us. It was Thursday night, and we appreciate you. We do it for you guys. It's really the only reason. Putting out content for you guys. So, if you like what you saw tonight, if you're new, hit the subscribe button. You'll get and hit the bell notification. That way, you get notified every time we post something on YouTube. We're still, like I said, we're trying to get back into the groove of things, and we just appreciate you guys being patient with that and kind of bearing with us after we took that long hiatus away, and we appreciate you still supporting us, guys. So, John, producer Kevin, we appreciate you guys coming and hanging out.